Chapter 9. Fairies from Outer Space. While researching ancient Polynesia, the word for star kept coming up as fe, F-E. This is the ancient European word for fairy. Do fairies come from the stars? To answer this, let's briefly digress from Polynesia. I believe that fairies, elves, nymphs, giants, mermaids, and other mythical creatures were real and that they were extraterrestrial. The linguistics point to fairies being from outside Earth, but the same can be proven by paying attention to the old fairy tales from around the world. In the stories of ancient Wales, there are two prominent figures: Gwynedd, the Queen of Mermaids, and her husband, Gideon Abdon, a powerful magician. Quoted directly from the Welsh Classical Dictionary, his residence was among the stars and called Caer Gideon. There are many references to mythical characters coming from outer space. I just didn't know it because it wasn't mentioned in childhood Disney movies about fairies. My attempt to get Caer Gideon properly translated proved confusing. In the Welsh dictionary, it was translated as Fort of Gideon and as Milky Way, as well as Castle in the Milky Way. When his wife, Gwynedd, was on Earth, she is said to be living among the clouds. Older generations of Welsh people have referred to cloud trails in the sky as the Sheep of Gwynedd. Apparently, she used some kind of flying device. Fairies are often also described as being in the air, roaming the clouds, being in the clouds, behind them, and traveling on wheels of fire. Flying fairies became so common that we depicted them with wings in the Victorian era. But before that, fairies were simply beings who had landed from the sky, dwelt on Earth, and sometimes flew back up. The ancient Scandinavians believed in the existence of the Gilsofar, the light elves. The light elves are said to be tall, shining, and beautiful beings who lived in a place between Earth and the heavens. Where is between Earth and the heavens? It is what we call outer space, the realm of physical planets and stars that you see in your night sky. To prove this was one purpose of my book, Levels of Heaven and Hell. Like no others, the Norse also believed that there were elves living below Earth. These subterranean elves were said to be skilled at creating metals and armor. The fairy beings from space, and the ones living in forests and under the earth, are also found in thousands of old stories and books of Ireland and Scotland. There they are called the Sidae. The texts say that they belong both to earthly and heavenly realms. What does that mean? It means they are interstellar travelers, real ETs. The Sidae are called aristocratic, powerful, and more mature than humans. But this didn't stop them from mating with and marrying humans. There are stories of half fairies, half mermaids, and even half gods as a result of human-alien mating. Sexual relations between non-terrestrials and humans are mentioned in mythology across the globe, and also in the Bible, Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. The same became mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Even today there are families that claim blood lineage from the ancient fairy folks, such as the MacLeod clan of Scotland. In even older times it was common for kings to claim lineage from half-gods who came from the stars. For example, the Egyptian list of kings that goes from human to half-god to gods the further you go back in time. The Irish also called fairies Deoin Usil, the noble people. These were said to originate from another realm beyond the sky. Upon their arrival on earth, they are said to have taken residence in the hills and mountains. But what are they doing on earth? What business do they have here? The old tales of England, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland seem to agree that the fairies and elves were beings too good to be condemned to hell, but not good enough to be allowed to enter heaven. They therefore wander the earth and travel the stars. It is said that the elves are fallen angels, cast out of heaven, but too good for hell. Some of them hope to ascend back to heaven. Some researchers say that these are Christianized versions of fairy stories, and that the oldest stories contain no such information. But their status as fallen angels is consistent with mythology from other parts of the world, as referenced in my 2 previous books. Examples of fairy tales mentioning these recurring themes are too many to count. Just to pick one of many examples. The Mari people are an ethnic group living in the Mari El Republic of Russia. The word Mari is said to derive from their word for human or mortal, which is Maria. Their religion speaks of the existence of various gods and half-gods who rule over Earth, the moon, the planets, the stars, and a god who rules over the entire universe. There is also a species of fairies called alabaster. Of these fairies, it is said they look like shooting stars when they travel in the sky. They could also shapeshift, taking on different forms, such as giant or dwarf, to deceive humans or seduce them into sex. Why do the alabaster look like shooting stars when they travel? It is because they are interstellar travelers. The New Zealand Maori say that they arrived to New Zealand 3,500 years ago, and they came upon small fairy people living in the forests and under the earth. Some of them lived only atop mountains, afraid to come down. Most were afraid of light, only emerging at night. The more benevolent among these beings taught the Maori magic spells, games, and methods of fishing. Some of them taught them the names and locations of different stars. The malevolent among the fairies abducted their women and children for sex or to eat their flesh. All of this aligns with what we've already learned in my 2 previous books. In one of these books, I shared a map of Norse mythology. Their highest realm is Yggdrasil, and just below that is the realm of the Aesir, Asgard. The Midgard is the middle realm, the earthly realm. There's Alfheim, realm of the elves, and Muspelheim, the land of raging fire. Then the lower realms, Fanaheim, realm of the Vanir, Jotunheim, realm of the frost giants, Niflheim, land of ice and mist, Hel, realm of the dead, Svartalheim, the realm of the dwarves. This scale places the realm of the elves, Alfheim, below the higher realm, Asgard, but above the human realm, Midgard. And in case if you haven't noticed, the Lord of the Rings trilogy mirrors all of this. The beings made of shining light are in Alfheim, which is at the same level as Muspelheim, the realm of the fire demons. Yes, these are the same demons mentioned in Christianity and the smokeless fire, Jinn, mentioned in Islam. The question that naturally arises then, are these extraterrestrials friend or foe? They have appeared as both, but it can't be denied that there is an element of mutual fear. Fairies have hidden from humans, and humans have run away from the fairies. There also appears to be an element of danger or envy. Humans are permitted to live on Earth's surface, or physically able to, without sun protection. The The fairies and giants appear to live at night and in caves to protect from the sun, or because there appears to be some kind of cosmic or heavenly decree that says they must not intervene in the affairs of humans. Across the Pacific, fairies were said to be living, physical beings that could be seen and touched. For example, there is a place in Rarotonga called Aupuru, where the fairies were seen bathing and playing. Aupuru is translated as gentle dew, but in ancient German it's Au-pu-ru, land, river, peace. There are Irish folk tales ranging back more than 1,000 years speaking of Tuatha De Danann, the people of Dana, Dana being a goddess, but the word could also mean Da-ana, for the ancestors. Because the Irish word Dana refers to the genealogical ancestral family line, on Wikipedia they are called a supernatural race. These people later became known as the fairies, but they differed greatly from what we think of as fairies, our view of fairies being distorted by Victorian-era fairy tales and 20th century Disney movies. Modern alien abduction and UFO contact accounts are not much different from ancient fairy contact accounts. They appear to be the same thing, with one dressed in modern clothing. Both have in common that humans are abducted, that technological marvels, mistaken for magic, are shown, that instant healing is performed sometimes, that humans get sexually molested. Maybe ancient fairy abduction and modern alien abduction are the same thing. Here are a few examples of ancient abduction through fairies. In the folklore of Europe, there is a concept called the Wild Hunt, or the Furious Army. It is said that at this event, the fairies are permitted to hunt down and abduct unbaptized babies. In Hungarian legend, there is a fairy woman named Dame Hirep. Dame is German for lady, who abducted young women and girls. In Irish mythology, a figure called the Dark Man, Far Daroca, is sent out by the fairy queen of the underworld with the task of abducting humans to take them back to fairyland. A human abducting fairy called Malakin was said to roam around Dagworthy Castle in Suffolk, England. This fairy used the voice of a child to fool and lure people. The word Malkin is ancient tongue for evil child. On the island of Manx there was a people called Sleighbeggy. They lived in underground burgs and sometimes ventured outside to abduct humans. The dragons of old are also said to be into abduction of humans and children. European mythology describes them as wingless reptilian creatures with bodily scales, living either under earth or in waters. They are frequently linked to hoarding treasure and luxury. The Dana people could erase a person's memory, clone humans in subterranean facilities, fly in airships, travel underwater, change the weather, and much more. They came to Earth to battle their fiercest enemy, the Fomorians. These Fomorians were a race of giants who had been terrorizing humanity with violence. They practiced human sacrifice, which the Tuatha De Danann opposed. I've come across the word mo, ancient German for man, being used for giants across many cultures, and the Irish Fomorian are no exception. Where did the Tuatha De Danann come from? Literally, from the heavens, and on the wings of the wind. It is said that the truth was not known beneath the sky of stars, whether they were of heaven or earth. While ancient accounts have them floating down from the sky, later renderings claim they arrived in vessels from the sea. Upon landing, they eventually defeated the Fomorian giants and another people called the Furblogs. Even though fairies and elves are called nature spirits in school books, on Wikipedia, and the top Google results, and in academic textbooks, The ancients said that they were flesh and blood beings who had sexual relations with humans and fathered children. In Irish, these godlike beings were called Aes Sedai, with the word Aes supposedly meaning race. Here's an interesting parallel. The Norse gods were also called Aes or Aesir. That's probably not a coincidence. I said in extraterrestrial linguistics the word as, A-S, was an ancient term for the flying saucers with which these human gods, quote-unquote, roamed the air. Researchers have speculated that the people of Dana were in Ireland in the time between 5000 and 3000 BC, based on the carbon dating of megalithic ancient sites such as the Newgrange Monument. The reign of the Danann eventually ended after they set up human kingship and left. Where did they leave to? I found no mention of that. But if they have to set up and train human kings before leaving, their journey was likely to be very far away, perhaps off-planet. We see parallels of this in the Sumerian and Egyptian kings, where humans took the reins after the gods left. Where did they leave? Some say they wished for humans to manage their own fate. Other tales say they were attacked by a people called Milesians. They came from Iberia and drove the Danann into hiding in forests, mountains, and subterranean dwellings, just like the giants went underground to hide from the Danann thousands of years before. The first kings post-Danann were half-Danann in lineage, with the lineage becoming increasingly diluted over time. A prominent king of the Danann was called Manannan, ancient German for man ancestor. He ordered his people to disperse and go into hiding after many defeats to the Milesians. Manannan's appearance among the people was frequently described with the term Wheel of Fire. The most famous figure of Irish mythology post-Danann as Mog Ruath, a descendant of the Danann lineage and known as a Druid. The word Druid meant something other than it does today. A Druid was a learned person or scholar, not some cloak and hood-wearing cultist casting spells in the woods. Mog Ruath owned a flying machine called Rowing Wheel, Rotating Wheel, or Wheel of Light. He was said to have assisted a guy named Simon Magus, Simon the Magician, with the building of his own flying wheel. History shows Simo Magus as a resident of Samaria, or modern Israel, a convert to Christianity, a heretic to Christianity after having a clash with Peter, the disciple of Christ, the founder of Gnosticism, a formidable magician, and many other contradictory things. There are biblical apocrypha, biblical books that did not make it into the official sanctioned version of the Bible, that mention how Simon could fly at will. Interestingly, Simon lived in the village of Gitta, that was said to have been settled by the Jewish tribe of Dan. Are the biblical tribe of Dan the Irish tribe of Danann? Possibly. Irish legend insists that Mog Ruath, who lived on Valentia Island off the coast of Kerry, helped Simon build a flying device called Roth Ramach, with which he sailed the air. Some accounts claim that Simon Magus wanted the flying wheel to show Peter and the other apostles of Christ that he was superior to them. A Christian saint by the name of Saint Columba of Knock, Ireland, or Comsile in Irish, born in the year 521, gave a prophecy saying that these quote-unquote strange ships would appear again at the end of days, and that they would carry 1,000 beds and 1,000 men in those beds. In my 2 previous books, I already identified ancient flying saucers as the chosen vehicles of our spacefaring ancestors. St. Comsile appears to have had a vision of flying saucer motherships, 1,000 men, reappearing in the end times. The Wheel of Light was, in Irish, called Roth Ramach, Roth Ramach, Roth Fail, and Roth Fall. The word roth is translated from ancient Irish as wheel. It's where we get the English word to rotate. The ancient German word for to twist is the same word, roth. The Old Latin word is rota. The word fail or fall means light, ring, circle, fate, and destiny. Ireland itself used to be called Inis Fail, for Island of Fate. Thus, you can now decipher the name of the most famous banking family of the last few hundred years, a family claimed to be secretly running the world. I am referring to the Rothschilds. Academics claim that the word means red shield because rot is red in German, but Roth, spelled with an H, means rotating. Shield is the German word for shield or plate, which in old days usually took the shape of a saucer. So Rothschild literally means rotating saucer. Now, why would any family choose such a name? It's because families of royalty and power like to denote heavenly lineage from extraterrestrials. They did so in ancient Egypt, and many still do today. The Maori word kare aroto means passionate or strong emotion. Contained in that translation is the very arcane knowledge that strong emotions are energy rotating. Hence, ka re a roto. The rays are rotating. In the language of Rarotonga, roto refers to certain cycles of the moon, believe it or not. In the language of Tongareva, the word roto means center. I don't have to explain the connection of rotation, do I? Ramach is translated as either spades, shovels, or oars. Rothfail appears to be the earliest name. The vehicles of the fairies are therefore called wheels of light, and their origin is another planet or realm. Flying saucers are one type of ship. The other type is flying wheels with spokes. These are referenced in old Hindu texts and also appear to be the ones St. Columcille is referring to. There have been tens of thousands of modern UFO sightings of things looking like gigantic Ferris wheels in the sky. When the biblical Ezekiel spoke of seeing a wheel within a wheel descend from the sky, he was possibly referring to something similar. The Ferris wheel skycraft has also been depicted on various medieval paintings and coins. Here is a quote from the 1874 book Practical Guide to the Isle of Man, quoting, "Some fishermen long ago arrived on the shore of an island which they had never seen or heard of because it was always enveloped in a magic cloud. They landed and presently came rolling on the mist, something like a wheel of fire with legs for spokes. And the portent so frightened the men that they fled to their boats. But the charm was broken, the Isle of Man had been discovered, and its possessions had been disputed by men and fairies ever since." End quote. A three-spoked wheel became the emblem for the Isle of Man, and even today the country's flag has three running human legs, as if they were running spokes, minus the outer rim of the wheel. And that same emblem appears on the badge of the MacLeod clan of Scotland, who trace their lineage back to the fairies. The family crest of the MacLeod clan is the horned bull. That's not a coincidence either. None of this is. It's a reference to their origin in the Taurus star system, referenced as our place of origin in my previous book. In the name MacLeod, we have the ancient German word Od, universe, God. Their Gaelic name is Seal Torcal, translated as seed of Torcal. All is another ancient German name for outer space or universe. Tor, ka, all is gate to space, or stargate. The word Seol for seed, we have the ancient German word for blood, ol, which is the origin of our word for oil. The most recent popular incarnation of the MacLeod clan, by the way, is Donald Trump. His mother, Mary Ann MacLeod, was born on the Isle of Lewis, a stone's throw from the Isle of Skye. Here's a direct quote from the book The History of Ireland by the 17th century historian Geoffrey Keating. Quote, Erie, the wife of Mac Graine, one of the princes of the country, with as many of her flying troops as she could keep together, retired to Tailton, and there related the misfortunes she had met with, and how she was routed by the enemy, and the choicest of her men were slain. End quote. Yes, that's from a history book, not a work of science fiction. We find the same legends of ancient China, Hindu mythology, the oral history of the Aborigines, and anywhere we bother to look, in fact. The most famous Norse god, Odin, traveled on a flying ship, Skibladnir. It was big enough to carry an entire army. The ship could sail as easily on water as in the air. And they didn't need to worry about wind conditions because the ship supplied its own breeze. Obviously, it had some kind of engine. Let's try dissecting the word Skibladnir. Off the bat, I understand blad, which is ancient Norse and German for plate, just like the word skilde. There's that saucer again. The words ski and skid mean to slide sideways, or to slide along, to slide downwards, and can even be understood in modern English. It can also refer to a beam or plank. I'm not sure what NIR stands for, NIR, but I am entirely satisfied with plate that slides sideways. The name gives us a hint of how flying saucers maneuver. The wife of Odin and sky goddess over the Vikings, Frigga, also operated a flying object that was comparable to a wheel, a jeweled spinning wheel, a wheel that shone brightly in the sky. The Valkyrites were golden-haired women whose horses galloped through the realms of the air.